Hi guys, welcome back to Chaz's No Bullshit Reptile Advice. I'm sorry about the lack of videos recently. Christmas is kicking our ass. We're really busy. To that end, to all of our customers, thank you ever so much for the support you've shown us. This is going to be a bumper Christmas for us. But as you can imagine, spare time, spare seconds, never mind to make videos, are hard come by. So I've had to come in early today, get the jobs out of the way so that I could even attempt to do one, and even then I'm probably going to end up getting disturbed, so we'll just see what happens. Today's question comes from Bob Reed. Chaz, please do a video on morphs and if it is morally acceptable to breed an animal intentionally to have a potentially worse quality of life purely for aesthetic appeal. So I mean that cuts right to the heart of it, doesn't it? There is a growing divide in the hobby between the people that prefer natural wild type and promote that over everything else, and then the people that still pursue world's firsts and new morphs. I would say that my tastes have certainly changed over the 27 years I've been doing this, and there's animals I've kept and there's things I've done breeding wise that I would not do now. But I think that potentially is more a symptom of how this hobby has changed, and what motivates me has changed. I kind of got caught up in the furore in the early 90s, which is when I started. I started in 1991, 1991, something like that. And I used to get Reptiles magazine from the US, and back then Peter Carl, Bob Clark, Brian Sharp, amongst others, Bob Applegate. I'm trying to think of other people that would. They would take out half and full page ads littered with awesome colour morphs, usually on the coloured aquarium gravel, because it really popped. And then you had the contrasting sort of Randy Lindbergh, albino, rosy boas and all this sort of stuff. And it just seemed a world apart from what we were producing in the UK. And I got caught up in that way. You wanting the morphs, and I grew up in a hobby where chasing the new morphs or the new type was the in thing. And now, coming, right up to speed in 2018, there's definitely more of a push to go back towards the wild type animals. I think, the aesthetic appeal versus worst quality of life are two separate issues. If we breed something that has a problem, a gene that is a problem, Jaguar Enigma spider, when they first produced it, they didn't realise probably just how serious this was, and then over time it did become more apparent. So really, should we still be breeding them? Absolutely, Bob, from the loaded style of question that you've asked, I know what your attitude is, but no, we shouldn't still be breeding them. That said, should they all be euthanized? Well, no. We get buying full collections all the time. We just inherited part of a collection this week. And occasionally we get spiders as part of that, or spider combos. Not really the Enigmas anymore, that seems to have died a death. Jaguars are still knocking about as well, but the spiders probably like the poster child for this problem gene. And yet, it's a problem gene. No, it shouldn't continue to be bred, but are spiders strong snakes? Do they feed well? Well, invariably, actually, spiders are some of the very best feeding royals you can get. Alright, their aim is shot to shit because of this head wobble, but they still want to feed, they still want to get, and they would make a serviceable pet with no issue. And, they could see out the rest of their natural life. I don't subscribe to euthanizing them or putting them down for the sake of it. I think that, that's a slippery slope. If everything that was born damaged or with a problem or a neurological issue was euthanized, people would soon be up in arms. So, this is man-made, I agree. It should have never been created, I agree. It shouldn't still be bred, I agree. But they have been, and once they're in your collection or they're your responsibility, do you want to be the one to make the call to put it down? I don't. This is an opinions thing, this is conjecture, this is You know, opinions are like arseholes, everybody's got one. The way that this hobby has changed, both in its attitude and the way that morphs and animals and crosses and hybrids have developed, was like examples off the top of my head. There was a big thing with common cross red tails. People would have a single red tail boa, they couldn't find another one to pair it up, they'd cross it with a common. Argentine boas, the same thing, plus once you crossed it you didn't need the paperwork. All very dodgy and nefarious, but it's what people did. Much to my shame, I crossed a Amirali male with a common boa, which is something that I should have never done. But I was 23, 24, and I could have tried telling myself. I'd have just told myself to piss off. I had a very different attitude to the attitude I have now. And it is through the benefit of hindsight, and it is through the benefit of cocking up and getting it wrong. You know, I've never once on this channel claimed to be perfect, or that I've not cocked up, made mistakes, and I've been very honest about that in the past. Another animal I owned was one called Samson. I didn't call him Samson, he was already named, but he was what was called a reticulese python, which is a Borneo bat-eater, which is a hybrid of the Burmese and the reticulated python, backbred to a Burmese, which in and of himself is a feat, because it was assumed that most bat-eaters were Jaffas, they were infertile once they'd been crossed, but he bucked that trend. So in one sense he proved something wasn't true, but in another sense he should have never existed. It was a hybrid that should have never existed, and I thought he was the bee's knees, the best thing since sliced bread. And looking back now, he was an abomination, should have never existed. There was no need for him to exist. And it was people like me that had an appetite for that sort of stuff that made that stuff be bred in the first place. So potentially people are just producing stuff that there is a market for. If there was no market for it, it wouldn't be bred. So potentially we need to look through education at a way of changing things up and shaking things about, to make people realise, see the beauty in the wild type, see the beauty in the locality. I think that we very much run the risk of, I was reading, actually, probably the best thing to do is, I was reading just some notes by Chris Mattson in one of his books. He's an author from England, and he wrote Keeping and Breeding Snakes, and it was about morphs, and inevitably I think it was about albino Burmese and then the crossing and the hybridization. And he said, per se, I don't particularly have an issue with the production of these colour morphs, and moreover I don't feel that I have the right to be able to chastise people about the choices they make. I agree completely. But as long as the wild lines are preserved and people are producing captive populations, even if they are wearing a different set of pyjamas, it doesn't hurt anybody. And as long as it's not really problematic like Jaguar or Spider or Enigma, I don't really see what the issue is. I go along with that. I think it'd be very snooty and snobby of me to start lording it over people, saying you can do this, you can't do that, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. But I think that maybe we need to explain to people that we need to stop and think. An example where it's been running unbridled, we've potentially cocked up now to the point where things are getting really difficult, is with the super dwarf reticulated pythons. So I've got no doubt in time the super dwarfs are going to be reclassified into their own subspecies or species, and the same way that happened with the Burmese, which was Bivitatus to Bivitatus progchi. So I believe that the same thing will happen with the retics. The problem that we've got is that because people are chasing ever smaller colour morphs of retic because of the manageability issue, what we're doing is making mutts out of mainlands and mutts out of the super dwarfs. And for me, this is a problem to the point where we can't find normal examples of Kalatoa, Kayuwari and Madu easily anymore. They're fetching good money, which is nice, but when people are buying them to purposefully put them into a colour morph super dwarf project, which there by definition means that there has to be mainland blood, this is a problem. Basically, we're hybridizing the shit out of a snake that will never get its pure form back. if in time they're not found anymore, or they're not being collected from the wild, and at some point we do have to put a stopper on that, and we have to be self-sufficient, then, you know, we're knackered, and they've become extinct in collections, and that's a real problem and a real risk. I think that I have a huge issue with the Scaleless Gene. I think that the Scaleless Gene is an abomination. I think it's absolutely disgusting, the fact that we're having to moisturize an animal and its built-in protection we are removing for what? Aesthetic appeal. Is its quality of life worse? Yeah, I believe it is. I think that the Scaleless Gene is the latest in a long line of money grabs, with Jaguar, Enigma and Spider being the first round. Now we've got people capitalising on the fact that an animal needs help with its moisture levels in its skin, because it essentially desiccates because it doesn't have the protective plates anymore. Why? You know, royal pythons being bred that are produced without heat pits. I mean, fuck's sake, why would you do that? Why would you do it? What benefit does it possibly derive? Because it's odd, or an oddball, or weird, and some Pillocks going to pay extra money for it. It's this sort of stuff that we need to put the brakes on, and all change for change's sake is not good. I get certain things, I understand. I mean, a good mainland white reticulated python, or even a purple, wow, that's a gorgeous snake. But then we've also got this added problem where we did the UV video the other day, where even though they've been produced and bred for 25 years, certain leopard gecko morphs now we can't expose to UV, or we have to be very careful if we do so, for risk that we're going to cause this dermal layers fusing and eye problems and other associated issues with exposure to UV when we've got severely pigment reduced animals. So does that therefore make their quality of life worse? See, this is where it starts to become tenuous, because not everybody keeps their leopard geckos under UV, and they haven't done for the last 30 years. But then there's this very vocal new minority coming through about how UV should be pretty much used across the board. That they know that research has been done that proves that cognitive health is better under UV light. So all this sort of stuff. So we've got this going on as sort of a subtext to the bigger issue as well. And it's hard to navigate. And I think that over the next few years, we're going to see it shake out a bit more. We're probably going to see a greater divide. We're going to see the ever vocal, naturalistic, uber advanced, uber vocal, uber opinionated keepers starting to become even more so, and then the morph guys getting even more sort of belligerent and, well, I'm going to get slagged off for this anyway, so why not do it? Let's take the smoke out of their sails by doing this, you know. And that, unfortunately, I think that's a dangerous game, playing chicken with the animals that we keep. I think at some point we've just got to try and be sensible about it. It's difficult to comment on what the next big thing is going to be, but there will be. The bubble's gone on royals, the bubble's gone on retics, the bubble's gone on boas, the bubble's gone on carpets. The weird old school colubrids seem to be making a resurgence, but the minute that there's a gene explosion in another group of animals, then everybody's going to jump ship and go on to that. That's the nature of the beast. And there are people within this hobby that chase the dollars, and that is one of their primary motivators. Unfortunately, people have just got to accept that not everybody is in this hobby for the love of the animals. Everybody was breeding retics for the love of the species until the bubble seemingly burst, and now everybody's selling their adults online for half the price they were 12 months ago because of these new laws in the UK. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. People have already sold up and disappeared, people that love the species. But if you loved them that much, you'd still have them. You'd still be producing them, because you told us that was what your primary motivator was. The minute you think that you're on a sticky wicket, you can't be seen for dust. They're the people I have a problem with. They're the people that don't have any character, that don't stand by the things that they say. That's the issue there. Beyond that, I mean, it's really down to personal taste and personal opinion. I can't tell you what to like and what not to like. I'm certainly not going to be the style of ramming it down your throat guy with the wild types died. These meme pages, Morphons and Tubloods and all that shit. I don't see the benefit to doing it. I think belittling somebody, you know, I don't see that as a grown-up way to do things. I will call you a dickhead to your face. I'm not bothered. You got to do it behind a stupid meme on a Facebook page from some random name you've made up, then you're just being a pussy. You're not actually backing up what you really think. And that for me again is an issue and a character problem that I've identified. I'm not a fan of. I mean, it don't matter. It's not that I'm overly aggressive. It's just I have no problem in sharing an opinion and being completely frank about the way I feel. And if you can articulate an argument, well, that's what matters. Nothing else. It doesn't matter necessarily even whether I'm right or wrong, but if there's a cognitive thought process and we've thought about it, we can argue our corner. Everyone's better for it. Have a discussion. Open up a debate. I mean, is it morally acceptable? Who am I to pass judgment? Well, really? I've got no more authority than you. If you keep reptiles, you're just as entitled to your opinion as me. The fact that I run a shop or I run this pokey little YouTube channel doesn't make any difference, doesn't make me any more entitled than any of you guys who watch these videos and comment on them. You're all entitled to it, and I guarantee your opinions will deviate from mine, and they are no more right or no more wrong than mine. They just are. And if it's persuasive, if people want to follow it, they will. There is nothing that we can do to force people. You just got to hope. By going through these thought processes, I've decided I should not have hybridized the Amarals and common boa. I should not have kept Samson, the Reticulese python. For me, they're a problem, but I can't do anything about them. I've done it. I hold my hands up and go, yeah, fucked up, shouldn't have done that. But that's just me trying to be straight with you. We'll be back again soon with another video. All the best, guys. Cheers.